Welcome back. Today I'm going to be repotting this large desert rose that I recently purchased 10 days ago from a nursery. It was grown in a large 25-gallon nursery pot with just normal potting soil, not specific for desert roses. And the first thing I did after I purchased it was I took it out of the pot, and I noticed that it had root rot right here. So what I did was I cleaned that out with a rag really well, all the way back, got all the rot out of there, down to the good hard part of the plant. And then I put just normal ground cinnamon powder on that, and along with other parts of the roots where some roots were broke from taking it out of the pot. And what the ground cinnamon does is it prevents infections and rot. So for the last 10 days, this plant has basically been like it is right now, sitting in my house in the shade, just air drying. What that does, it allows any of the cuts or damaged areas of the roots, to include the root rot area, to completely dry out and kind of callus over before I repot this plant today into good, true desert rose soil. So now the root rot problem is gone. This is all nice and hard, not rot anymore. Before I plant this tree today, some of these straggly roots that are way up here, I'm going to cut off with a razor blade that I have that has been disinfected. And I'm going to cut some of these high up stringy roots, just because in the future I think that they will take away from the overall look of the tree. This plant was growing at a level right about here in the pot, and I'm probably going to raise it up to probably about an inch to an inch and a half. Okay, so here's the root rot. This is where the soil level was. I'm going to ensure that my new soil level is just slightly lower than this root rot area. You don't have to do that. Like if the root rot was way down here, obviously you wouldn't be able to do this. You wouldn't be able to plant the tree way up here. But since it's roughly 1 3/4 to 2 inches below the old soil level, I'm going to plant it there just so I can ensure that there's plenty of air and this is able to stay dry and not cause a problem for this tree in the future. So since that area is so close to the old soil level, I'm going to utilize that to my advantage this time by making sure that area is above soil so it stays healthy. Can't always do that, but when you can, you might as well. And the reason why I'm taking some of these smaller roots off is because in time, these large roots are going to become the trunk of this tree over the years as I, over the years as I continue to raise this desert rose up in the soil level. And I want to have a nice, clear vision of the trunk of these thick roots and not have any stringy roots grown over top of those. I'm even considering, okay, I'm not sure if this can be the front of the tree or the other side, but even this root is going to be a distraction in the future compared to having it gone and you being able to just see the trunk of the tree. So even that root, I'm going to go ahead and get rid of it. Main thing when you're working with a razor blade, obviously, is watch where your fingers are and go slow. I made my first cut, and now that I can clearly see, I can go back and make this smoother with a second, third, or even fourth cut if needed. That looks good. Kind of like doing surgery. You would hope that your surgeon takes his time and doesn't just start hacksawing stuff out. There we go. Now I can cut this root. Clean this tree up a little bit. Other side of the tree, and I got some small ones I can take off. Let's clean it up a little bit. You don't have to do this, but in all honesty, in the future, this tree will, in the next 2 to 3 years, this tree will look many times better by having some of these straggler roots taken care of now, and then of course it gives plenty of time for the tree to heal over the wounds. And like some of these ones way down here, I'm not going to mess with them today. Maybe next year when I repot this tree, I'll probably take those off also, but I don't think I'm going to do it today. I think that looks pretty good. All right, now since I made some new cuts on this tree, I want to put normal ground cinnamon on any of the cuts, any of the wounds of where I made cuts at on this tree. Whether it's, if I would, and I do the same thing if I was cutting branches today, which I'm not, but if I was, I would also put ground cinnamon on those. This is one that was really high up. This one here. That one. Now another thing I'm going to do is, like I said, I'm going to pot this into good draining soil. My soil mix is roughly 50% clay, Trufus, I believe is how you pronounce it, and 50% pine bark nuggets. And I'm just gonna put a little bit in there where the root rot was. And what that does is it's really good free draining soil for your desert roses. And I'm not going to water this desert rose today after I'm done potting it. I'm going to let it sit in this pot with all the soil 100% dry. This soil is 100% dry for 5 to 7 days in the shade of my house, not in full sun, not outside, inside my house, in the shade. So all these new wounds that I just caused by cutting off roots will have a chance over the next week to callus over and to dry out before I start watering. Because if I just start watering today after cutting on these roots, I could get more root rot at all those openings that I created. And even if I didn't cut any roots, if I by accident broke off a root and I didn't realize it, and I planted the tree and watered it, I could get root rot in that area. So I don't want that to happen. So I'm going to just wait about a week before I give this tree its first re-watering. And actually, another trick that I like to do is, if I can, on some of these bigger roots, right, like this one right here, I like to put a little small piece of styrofoam in there. And what that does, just normal styrofoam, is it makes this tree immediately look bigger, thicker, and older, because we perceive a large tree with a large trunk to be an older tree, because obviously it had to have been grown for a long time to get that size. So by putting this piece of styrofoam in here, if I can get it in there, it will make the tree immediately look wider. So over the next year, like right now, by doing that, I'll show you on this side. By doing that, this tree is now 1/4 of an inch to possibly the full size of that piece of styrofoam, 1/2 inch wider across. So it makes the whole trunk of this tree look bigger and older. And it also creates a little bit of interest by having a little void or a little cavity right there. So that's about how high I want this tree, because there's my root rotted area that I had. So I'm gonna add a little bit more soil. Tuck some of these roots down. And some of these roots that I said that I could probably take off next year are going to be slightly above the soil level this year, which is not a problem. Like I said, you don't have to take any of those roots off, so all those roots that I took off would have been above the soil level. They're just be kind of unsightly, at least in my opinion, for the next year. But I'll wait a little while before taking those off. We have plenty of time. I know we get impatient. We want our trees, plants to look amazing as soon as possible, of course. But the other thing we really want is we want our plants to live. So I would rather work a little bit slower, take a little bit less roots off, say this year, ensure that the plant is going to live and be able to do more root work in the future by having a nice healthy desert rose to work on. I'm making sure I packing this soil down around the roots so I don't have any air pockets in the soil. Now this soil mix does not hold a lot of water, which is what we want for our desert roses so we don't have that issue with root rot. It holds a little bit of water so the desert rose's roots have enough time to soak up some moisture and store it inside of its roots and inside of its trunk, but yet not enough moisture retention time to cause root rot, which is why we don't want our desert roses planted in normal potting soil, because normal potting soil holds way too much water for way too long and causes oftentimes root rot. So by using the correct soil and the correct watering regimen after repotting, we're able to prevent, maybe not 100% root rot, because it still sometimes happens. Nothing's 100%, right? But yet it prevents a majority of the issue. Now this desert rose, when I bought it, it was in bloom, had a lot more leaves on it, but of course, being dehydrated for the last 10 days, a lot of those leaves have fallen off. But over the next month, once I start watering again here in a week, over the next month to 2 months, it will just start growing like crazy. Now that it's springtime and it's in a new soil that's correct for this type of plant and a new growing season, it would just grow really well. And here's my little area that I have my root rot area issue at, above the soil level. So I'm still gonna get plenty of air inside there to ensure that it's not gonna be a problem in the future. Fingers crossed. But that's the plant for right now. I'm not sure if I'm going to let this desert rose grow to be a full-size desert rose, or if I'm going to, in the future, prune it into a bonsai. That I really love the look of bonsais with the desert roses. So I'm not sure if I'm gonna do that with this plant or not. I'll figure that out over the next year or so. But this is what I have today. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you have any questions, leave me a comment down below. Till the next video, have a good day.